Oh my goodness. Okay, well, my talk today is uniting our soulful selves, uniting our two selves. Uniting our two selves. I said it wrong. It's uniting our two selves. And in order to unite our two selves, I think the place we have to start is to figure out who those two selves are. What are those two selves? Do we have two selves? Well, those of you that know me, and those of you that don't, that just heard about me, know that I've spent 35 years plus in professional theater. And through my work in theater and my spiritual seeking going on simultaneously, I developed what I like to refer to as my metaphorical, metaphysical guide to life. It's based on the theory that Shakespeare wasn't just dropping a pretty piece of poetry when he said all the world's a stage and all the men and women merely players. He was actually cueing us into a metaphysical guide, a metaphorical, metaphysical guide to life. That those things that work on the stage, those things that make sense for an actor playing a character, also make sense for us in the completion of our role here, the playing of our role full out on the great stage of life. And so that might cue you in to what I think are our two selves. The first is the player. That player that is coming onto the great stage of life. That soulful self, that sliver of pure source energy that is coming into this body to have this life experience. That which we call the soul, right? That's the player. And that which we think of as ourselves, the us that shows up, this body, this personality, this ego, all of that, this mind, that's the character. That's the character that the soulful self is playing. And when we disconnect those two things, when we think they're separate, we actually are participating in a little conundrum that doesn't make sense. We think of our soul as something that's hanging out somewhere else while we live this life. Our soul is far away, right? And it's hanging out there, kind of waiting for us to get done with the life to fully engage back again and start being in charge, clearly, of what's going on, right? We're waiting for life to be over for our soul to get its act together again. We're here, and our mind and our ego and our body is what's running the show here, right? That's like a character in a play thinking that the actor is standing off stage while the character is performing. It doesn't make any sense when we think about it that way. Or because I love metaphors, I'll give you another one. That's like a plane thinking that it's flying itself and it's just giving the pilot a ride, right? The pilot's just watching out the window as we go flying through the clouds. Right? The ego gets in charge. And the ego gets a bad rap. The egoic self, when we start to say the ego, we all take it as kind of an insult, right? It's like, oh yeah, my ego's in charge, and so I think I'm insulting myself. Well, no. The ego is what Dr. Sue Morter refers to as the protective personality. It's that part of us that has learned how to behave here in this role. And we learn it through experience. We learn those things that bring us fear, that bring us frustration, that bring us trouble into our lives. And we learn the protective personality, that egoic self, learns to start taking care of us. And it sets presets, what I call presets: justification, expectation, limiting beliefs, preconceived notions. These are our presets that we learn over time, that we set in place, and they become the myths that we guide our life through, right? Some people aren't meant to succeed. I won't be good at that. I'm not good enough to try that. Why try? I'll probably fail. Those kinds of thoughts come from the protective personality wanting to keep us from pain, right? The egoic self. And so all of those presets, all of those things that we develop, they tell us, they explain the whys in our life. We justify why that happened, why somebody has something I don't have, why I can't or shouldn't have that thing. Well, I'm going to tell you 4 keys today to uniting our two selves. And I'm going to tell you 4 stories about those 4 keys. Actually, it's 3 keys and 1 key to the key. So I'm going to start with the key to the keys, okay? And I'm going to tell you 4 stories, 1 for each key. And the 4 stories come from 4 wise guys, okay? 4 wise boys. I'm supported by all these beautiful women up here today, but these stories are about 4 wise gentlemen. And the first, the one with the key to the keys, is that guy sitting over there. and he's so excited when I talk about him. My beloved partner in life, Mr. Rex Miller, also the glorious musical director here. But see, can you hear him? He's over there clearing his throat already. He's not ready for this. Well, so I'm going to tell you this story about Rex and I. People tend to think that he's the quiet guy behind the piano, that he doesn't say a lot. And in fact, when I was on the board of CSL, Doug Hoggett, who was the board president at that time, when my first board meeting, I kept saying, well, Rex, and by halfway through the board meeting, Doug stopped me and he said, I have heard more tonight of what Rex says in the last 30 minutes than I have in the last 10 years of knowing him. And I'm like, that's because he talks a lot at home. And it's good stuff. So one of the things that I enjoy doing a lot is I really enjoy debating. I love philosophical conversations. I love to get in and dig at it all and, really dig into the deep philosophical, metaphysical questions. And that to me is like some kind of conversational crack. I love to do that. And so Rex and I would sit over the dinner table and we would get into that, from the beginning of our relationship. We've been friends for 25 years and a couple for 15. And for at least 15 years, we've been doing this kind of debating, right? And when we first started out, and we would be going back and forth, and I would be thinking I had my points in place, and I was doing my thing, and I was winning this debate, right? And Rex at some point would go, I would get really busy. I would start going, well, why is that? Well, why is that? Well, why is that? And Rex would inevitably just calmly go, why isn't a question? Ask that another way. And I would just be like, in my mid flail, intellectual flail at him, right? And I would think that I was getting my grammar criticized or my word choice slapped down. And so I would try again. And he would say, why isn't a question? There is no why. Ask another question. Ask it a different way. And I would just want to reach across the table and, find another way to get him to stop telling me that. And I went through literally a couple of years thinking that Rex was just being mean to me when he would do that, right? When he would shut me down. He's really loving being talked about like this, by the way. But one day in acting class, I heard myself telling my acting students who were looking for why their character was behaving this way and how to understand their character, how to know how to play their character based on why, right? They were looking for a why. And I heard myself saying, you can't play why. Why is unplayable. Why is undoable. Why isn't helpful. Ask what. Ask what they want. Ask what they need. Ask what you are going to do to represent that and how you are going to do it. But why won't help you. Be active. It's inactive. It's a question for the mind. It's a question for the ego. And all of a sudden, I went, oh, that's what he's been saying to me for years. There is no why. He's right. Yay, Rex is right. There is no why. Why is a non-question. Why is just a question for the ego. Why is a question looking for justification. It's looking for validation. Think about it. Can you think of a why question that isn't that? So, the next 3 points, the next 3 keys, they each require us to look for the what instead of the why. And the first one, the first key to uniting our two selves is forgiveness. Forgiveness. We have to be aware of what we are holding judgment on. We have to notice that when we're not in forgiveness, that's our protective personality saying, there are all these reasons why I shouldn't forgive myself or someone else. There's all kinds of why to keep forgiveness from happening. If we look for it, we can find it. We can all spout it out. When I am trying to help a client or one of my kids to find forgiveness, I will ask them to just, whether they know what they're doing or why they're doing it, to just start saying the Ho'oponopono. Do you guys know the Ho'oponopono? It's an ancient Hawaiian prayer. And it was repopularized, made re-famous, or made famous worldwide by Dr. Hugh Lin in the 1970s. And he was a psychiatrist in Hawaii. And he went to work for the state hospital. He was working in an area of the criminally insane. And rather than going out and working with his clients and teaching them the Ho'oponopono, he would simply sit down with their files each day for the criminally insane on this ward that was really a nasty place to be, and for the staff as well. He would just open the files every day and say the Ho'oponopono focused on each of them over their files. And the Ho'oponopono goes like this: I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, I love you. Now, when I tell my clients or my kids, and they are in full-fledged protective personality mode and going, well, I know somebody did this to me and it's unfair, and right? And they're totally in that moment. When I tell them to say the Ho'oponopono, first thing that protective personality does is say, why do I have to be sorry? What have I got to ask forgiveness for? I'm not, why do I have to say I'm sorry? There's that why, right? And it's because we're pure source energy. That is our true self. That is our highest self. The soulful self is pure source energy. We are energy. Everything here is energy. Everything everywhere is energy. Source energy. And how do you move the ego out of the way for a second to let it remember that? To let the energy transform. It will transform. You don't have to make it transform. That's the ego thinking. We have to make that energy shift. If we simply do what, actually I say to my girls, it's time to Ho'oponopono your blank off. It's another word for rear end. And that's what I say to them when they get all wound up. It's time to Ho'oponopono your off, okay? And they do. and they don't usually know why. But if you can sit down and focus on that person, focus on that event, focus on the car that's broken down, it doesn't matter. It's all energy. It's all source. And simply say, I am sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. I love you. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. I love you. You don't have to know what you're sorry for, why you're sorry. It doesn't matter. It's shifting the energy. It could be, I'm sorry for the pain that I'm experiencing and that you're experiencing. It could be, please forgive me for any role I have played, past, present, or future, on any level that contributed to this situation that we're in. It could be, thank you for existing, for being here to help me work through this moment, painful as it may be. Thank you for this opportunity. And I love you. And all of us can remember that the clearest connection with our soulful self is by remembering that when I say we're all energy, I mean pure love energy. That is the energy that binds us all together. Dr. Hugh Lenz says, the only purpose in your life and mine is the restoration of our identity. Our mind back to its original state of void or zero, as Buddha would say, of purity of heart, as Jesus would say, and of blank, as Shakespeare would say, through the nonstop cleaning of the Ho'oponopono. Okay, that's story number one. So forgiveness, first key. Second story, a number of years ago, Rex and I worked on a project in Sun Valley. The Dalai Lama came to Sun Valley, did a production for a big, huge event on compassion for 10,000 people. And the next day, he did an event for 8,000 children from all over Idaho. And he did the 8,000 children thing as a Q&A on compassion. And so these children got to ask questions. And on that second day, one of the children asked the question of, this was a teenager child, but nonetheless, he said, with everything you've been through, with being the leader of Tibet and being chased out of Tibet at 14 years old by people who want nothing more than to kill you. And today they want nothing more than to kill you. And you're telling us to have compassion. How do you have compassion for those people that want nothing more than to do you wrong? And they have done you wrong, and they've tortured your people of your nation. How do you have compassion for that? And he said, you know, we all have friends. We all have friends. Friends good. Friends easy. Easy to love friends. It is easy to love the people that we love, that we understand. But he said, but sacred friend, that's the person whose behavior, whose showing up is so contradicting to the way that you view your life, so painful, brings so much pain, brings so much hardship, that your heart has to expand in order to even be able to coexist with them. That is your sacred friend. That is the person who is doing you the gift of expanding your heart. And so, just think for a second. Just close your eyes for a second and think who your sacred friend might be. Who is your sacred friend? Who is that person in your life right now, or maybe they're still around from when you were 5 years old in your mind? That sacred friend, that person who can evolve your heart bigger through the pain that they cause, through the pain that they bring. and you ask yourself, not why did they do it, but what is the gift in this? What is the larger learning of love? What is the possible thing that is the ultimate gift that they brought me? You can all open your eyes now. And let's talk about the third key. The third key, we've had forgiveness, we've had gratitude, forgiving yourself and everything and everyone. Gratitude for those things that seem to be painful as your sacred friend. That's a different level of gratitude. Finding the gift, right, in every situation. Third thing, love. My fourth wise guy is a guy who was my acting teacher, my Shakespeare teacher, when I was studying at the National Shakespeare Conservatory. And his name is Mario Soletti. Obviously, Mario's Italian, but you wouldn't know it to look at him. He was a 60-something dapper gentleman with his mustache and his goatee and his tweed jacket with the patches on the elbows, you know, and fairly affected, right? But he was a brilliant acting teacher. And part of the reason he was such a brilliant acting teacher is because the man spoke in sound bites. He literally, the things that he said, the things that he quoted, the quotes that he flew out there in acting class are things that my students for the last 35 years who never met him, they all say all the time. And almost all of those sound bites of his are also great metaphorical, metaphysical guides. And here's one. When a student when we'd finish a scene, right, and we'd do our scene in class, and it would be Mario's turn to give us feedback, he would oftentimes get up and he'd come up on the stage and he'd sit down beside one of the actors and he'd take your hand and he'd say, "She's good. She's good. Yes, kids? She's very good. Yes?" And then he'd say, "Now, honey." Thank you, dear. He'd say, "Now, honeys, listen to me, honeys. I'm going to save your lives. You've got to find the love." That's my favorite Marioism. The Rexism of the day is there is no why. The Marioism of the day is you've got to find the love. And that's the what. That's the what. What he meant by that is it doesn't do you any good to be playing a state of being. This is an angry character. This is this is a serial killer, or this is a whatever. That doesn't help you. It doesn't tell you what to do. But when you can find what that character loves, and remember, the character is you. Okay? In this play you're in on the great stage of life, that desire in your heart, that profound feeling deep inside of you of what you love, that's telling you what is driving your life. That's what your soul is here to experience. Joseph Campbell said a lot of lovely things. One of my favorites is, he said, "The privilege of a lifetime is being who you are." Knowing who you love and living that, knowing what you love. So I'm going to ask you, just like I asked you about who would be your sacred friend, who would you say the Ho'oponopono to? What do you love? What is that desire? Is there a desire? Is there something deep inside of you that you have not taken a step toward? That desire, that is your soul talking to you. That's the pilot talking to you. And you, the little airplane, are going, "Yeah, I got this. I got this. Clouds, look. Yay." Right? Joseph Campbell also said, "The ego is as you think of yourself. You in relation to all the commitments of your life as you understand them. The self is the whole range of possibilities that you've never even thought of. The true self And you're stuck with your past when you're stuck with the ego's perspective. Because if all you know about yourself is what you found out about yourself, when we talked about the presets, what you learned about yourself, if all you know about yourself is what you found out about yourself, well, that already happened. The self is a whole field of potentialities to come through. Yet to come through. The field of infinite possibilities. That's who you are, right? And we're uniting that egoic self with that soulful self, the doer, and that which is expressing in, as, and through that doer. When we allow ourselves to be the fullness of our true being, then we become both the pilot and the plane, both the character and the player. This is an active relationship. This is not something where the soul is on pause while we have a party down here. That's not what's happening. So what if you began to look at every moment of every day as, not like we used to learn in Sunday school, those of us that came from a Christian tradition of what would Jesus do, but what would my soul do? What is my soul wanting to do? What am I here to do? And it's probably not fighting. It's probably not causing someone else pain. It's probably not causing ourselves pain. It's probably not hanging on to pain from 30 years ago. It's learning that process of forgiving. It's learning that process of gratitude, of accepting everything as a gift and discovering what that gift might be that we gave to ourselves by bringing that into our life. And about finding what we love. You came into this life in a supreme act of trust. You are not what you do. You came here to do. If we think of ourselves as what we do, what happens when we don't do that? You are not what you do. You came here to do. You are not what you have. You came here to experience having. If you think of yourself as what you have, what happens when it goes away and you're still here? That can't have been it. You are not what others think of you. Does that? If you are, then you would change every time somebody else came into your circle and thought something different about you. You are also not what you think about yourself. You are what you find within yourself, what you discover, what you allow within yourself. You are the soulful self. You are that sliver of source energy that came here to experience. So what if you start to think, decide, and act as the soul? No longer from the, what do I have, what do I do, right? What do I need right now to make my egoic self, my protective personality feel safe? What if we just leapfrog right over that to think, decide, and act as the soul? What if we make our choices listening to our soul? What if we're seeking our connection with the pilot all the time? Let's ask what we want, not why we can't have it, or do it, or be it. Let's use the 3 keys. Let's remember that we can forgive ourselves and anyone and anything. We don't have to know why. We just have to start into the practice. And let's help ourselves live consciously in that forgiveness, in that gratitude, in that love, experiencing what our soulful self came here to experiencing. Stand center stage as that proud actor and fully accept your role center stage on the great stage of life. And that's when we will unite our two selves. Namaste.